In our headlines on this Monday, June 2nd, here in South Korea. In fewer than 13 hours, polling places will open their doors to Koreans casting their ballots for the next president, who will begin his duty at the top office the following day. And final preparations are underway as the National Election Commission seeks to ensure an orderly, transparent voting process as it calls on citizens to exercise their civic duty. Meanwhile, the presidents of the US and China are expected to speak on the phone amid allegations of violations of a temporary tariff deal penned in Geneva last month. With Election Day slated for tomorrow, today is the final day of campaigning for the presidential contenders. That being said, our political correspondent Shin Ha-young is standing by at a rally of Liberal Party contender Lee Jae-myung, who will speak to supporters at Yeouido Park here in capital Seoul. Ha-young, it's great to have you on, so do start us off.
Well, Sunny, indeed, today is the final day of the official campaign period, and I'm here at Yeouido Park in Western Seoul, where Democratic Party presidential candidate Lee Jae-myung will stage the finale to his official campaign. And right now, the area is getting ready for the rally, and as you can see behind me, a large crowd of people has already gathered in front of the stage. And choosing Yeouido as the site of the end of his campaign is meant to highlight what this snap election is really about. And Yeouido is home to the National Assembly, where a vote put an end to December's martial law saga. It's also where protesters spent a cold winter with light sticks calling for the impeachment of former President Yoon Suk-yeol. And just like at the start of his campaign, he is expected to highlight his revolution of light message and emphasize his commitment to ending what he describes as an insurrection. And the party's campaign will begin at 7:30 p.m. and he is expected to arrive here at 8 p.m. to deliver a speech. And meanwhile, he focused his last day of rallies on Seoul and the surrounding metropolitan area. Earlier today, he visited Seongnam City in Gyeonggi-do Province, not only the city where he grew up, but also where he was first elected to public office as the city's mayor in 2010. Take a listen.
Your vote is the start of real change, turning despair into hope, division into unity, and stagnation into growth. Trust Lee Jae-myung, a loyal and capable public servant who has always delivered results through action. I'll get the job done.
After wrapping up his rally in Yeouido, he'll turn to YouTube Live at 10 p.m. to make a final appeals to voters.
Ha-young, the official campaign period comes to a close in a few hours. That being said, could you walk us through Lee Jae-myung's 22-day campaign?
Well, Sunny, I've been covering Lee Jae-myung's campaign from the day he declared his candidacy, which took me all over the country. And according to the Democratic Party, he held rallies, total of 66 rallies nationwide during the 22-day official campaign period. And he traveled over 5,000 kilometers and met more than 236,000 people on the trail. And unlike past campaigns that focused mostly on the capital area, over half of his rallies were held outside Seoul. And as he traveled across the country, he repeatedly emphasized two main goals: bringing the country together and putting an end to insurrection. And another notable point is that he delivered his rally speeches from behind bulletproof glass. And this follows growing concerns within the party and among supporters over his safety, especially considering he was stabbed in the neck during a visit to Busan in January last year. And his camp has also restricted access near the stage and is limiting physical contact with supporters, including handshakes. And that's all for this hour, but I'll bring more updates in our later newscast. Back to you, Sunny.
All right, Ha-young, thank you for now. That was our Shin Ha-young with the latest from the Liberal camp. Up next, we touch base with the Conservative camp, whose contender Kim Moon-soo is poised to end his rally here in Seoul as well. My colleague Kim Do-yeon joins me now. Do-yeon, welcome back. So curtains are going down on Kim's campaign in downtown Seoul, I hear.
That's right, Sunny. As you can see behind me, preparation is well underway already for this grand finale, the biggest rally of Kim's presidential election campaign. Now, he's set to arrive here around 8:30 p.m., and he's making his way up from all the way down from Jeju, where he started early morning. He stopped at Busan and Daegu. Now he's only got Daejeon left before reaching here. Now, throughout this cross-country journey, he's had many messages for the voters, and he also had a plea for more votes, and he apologized for the declaration of martial law again.
If I am elected, I will pursue reforms and changes beyond what anyone can imagine. I will fundamentally transform the way the government operates in line with the people's demands and the calling of the times. And I will never let the people down.
Now, here at the finale, the event will kick off at 6 p.m., like an hour and a half before Kim arrives. This is popular finale spot. We saw Yeouido is here as well back in 2022. There will be other PPP primary contestants here on the stage to make the finale more impactful. As you know, the rally speakers and trucks are going to all shut down by 9 p.m. and afterwards Kim will take it to the streets. He's set to walk around popular nightlife neighborhoods, Hongdae and Gangnam, to meet with younger voters. Now, this doesn't apply to us, but in Korea, election days are public holidays, so a lot of young people could be enjoying the holiday eve.
Also, Toyon, what have been some of the main messages that Kim Moon-soo sought to share during his 22-day rally?
Right, Sunny, by the time he reaches here at 8:30 p.m., he'll have covered 7,300 kilometers in the past 22 days with 157 campaign activities, according to the party. Now, through this packed journey, Kim's message from the beginning was clear that Lee Jae-myung has too many legal risks and that he's acting like a dictator already. Now, he cited Lee's guilty rulings that have been appealed, the DP's pressure on the Supreme Court, and the DP's legislative efforts to protect Lee from his legal risks. We all know Kim started this race on the back foot. His party's president was impeached over the declaration of martial law. The polls had him trailing the DP's Lee Jae-myung well beyond the margin of error. To close the gap, Kim had to court undecided voters while the party sought to distance itself from former President Yoon Suk-yeol. In recent days, Kim also drew attention with daily T-shirt slogans highlighting his love for family as his wife and daughter actively campaigned alongside him. It was a contrast to his DP rival who has kept his family largely out of the public eye. That's all for now. Back to you, Sunny.
All right, Toyon, we'll let you get back to the coverage of the Conservative camp. Thank you for that report. Also, on the final day of the official campaign period, Reform Party candidate Lee Jun-seok sought to reach out to young voters in the capital area before heading to the Conservative stronghold of Daegu. At lunchtime earlier today, he was at the Korea Polytechnic University in Gyeonggi-do province for talks with students at the cafeteria there. Later, he made his way to Gyeongsan in Gyeongsangbuk-do province to sit down with students at Yeongnam University. The final venue of his presidential rally this evening is Susong Lake in Daegu City. The National Election Commission has pledged an orderly, transparent election tomorrow while calling on voters to exercise their civic duty. Pyun Ye-young reports.
With just one day remaining before South Korea elects its new president, National Election Commission Chairperson No Tae-ak has strongly urged citizens to exercise their voting rights. On Monday, No called for unity and active participation, saying, "Let us build a Korea united through the power of the vote." He emphasized that this election is a crucial opportunity to move beyond conflict and division, and encouraged voters to use the final day of the campaign period to carefully assess candidates and their policies. No also promised transparency and accuracy in the vote count. Meanwhile, the National Fire Agency announced on the same day that 242 fire departments nationwide have launched special emergency operations. Crews will inspect polling and counting stations for fire hazards and increase patrols to prevent accidents. Precautions include a 24-hour surveillance and response system and maintaining direct communication with election officials and police. Privately operated polling stations are also drawing attention. While polling stations are typically set up in government buildings, private venues may be used when public facilities are unavailable. According to Yeonham News, Among some polling places this year are recreational facilities like gyms and taekwondo studios, as well as food and beverage facilities such as cafes and even pizza shops. The main voting will take place on Tuesday from 6 a.m. to 8 p.m., with all citizens over the age of 18 having the right to vote. Pyongyang, Arirang News.
The Trade Ministry held an emergency meeting with Korea's aluminium and steel makers, including POSCO and Hyundai Steel, early on this Monday. On the agenda were U.S. intentions to double the current 25% tariff on steel and aluminium imports into its market. Now, last Friday, U.S. President Donald Trump announced plans to raise the import duty on steel and aluminium to 50% starting June 4th. That is Wednesday this week. Industry heavyweights have urged the government to swiftly address the matter with the Trump administration. And the Trade Ministry here, for its part, has pledged to seek to minimize the fallout on local businesses. Meanwhile, U.S. President Donald Trump and his Chinese counterpart Xi Jinping are expected to speak on the phone amid allegations of violations of a temporary bilateral trade deal agreed upon last month in Geneva. Our Yeouido has more.
U.S. President Donald Trump and Chinese President Xi Jinping are expected to speak soon on ongoing trade negotiations, according to White House Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent. The anticipated phone talks come amid renewed tensions after Trump accused China of breaching a temporary agreement made last month in Geneva. That deal was aimed at easing trade tensions by mutually easing tariffs and trade restrictions. Bessent stressed that China is holding back its exports of rare earth minerals, which are critical for global industrial supply chains. Under the temporary truce, China reduced its tariffs on U.S. imports to 30%, down from the steep 145% level initially imposed in response to Trump's trade measures. Over the weekend, Trump took to his social media platform to say that if the courts somehow rule against the U.S. on tariffs, that would allow other countries to hold the U.S. hostage with their anti-American tariffs. His comments followed a Thursday decision by a federal appeals court to temporarily pause a lower court ruling that had invalidated most of his tariffs. Trump added this would mean the economic ruination of the United States of America. While Trump administration officials say they have other options for imposing tariffs should they ultimately lose the case, Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick made it clear there will be no extension to the 90-day pause. In a Sunday interview with Fox News, Lutnick stated, "Rest assured, tariffs are not going away." On Friday, Trump announced he would double tariffs on steel and aluminum imports from 25% to 50%. Yeouido, Arirang News.
Ahead of potential talks in Turkey on this Monday, Ukraine and Russia ramped up their military operations against each other this past weekend, with Kyiv launching one of its most ambitious counteroffensives against the Kremlin. Our Yeouido has the latest.
Ukraine and Russia are set to sit down for a second round of peace talks at around 1 p.m. local time in Istanbul on Monday. But just a day prior, on June 1st, a Ukrainian drone attack had destroyed more than 40 Russian planes deep in Russia's territory. In an evening address on Sunday, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said that the operation had been planned for more than a year and a half and used 117 drones to carry out the attacks. It's been reported that Zelensky personally supervised the operation, which he claims was headquartered out of an office next to the local Russian intelligence and security service. Codenamed Spider's Web, over the 18 months it took to prepare, sheds of drones were smuggled into Russia aboard special compartments of freight trucks, deployed to at least 4 separate locations in the perimeters of air bases. Then the roof panels of the sheds were removed remotely to launch the attack. According to Ukraine's domestic security agency, the operation disabled 34% of Russia's strategic cruise missile bombers and caused approximately $7 billion in damage. Meanwhile, Russia also launched a significant attack on Ukrainian territory overnight on the same day with some 472 drones and 7 ballistic and cruise missiles, killing 12 Ukrainian soldiers and injuring over 60 others. It has been reported that the previous meeting of the two sides on May 16th resulted in the war's biggest prisoner swap, but showed no signs of peace or even a ceasefire. It was also then that Ukraine and Russia agreed to exchange their conditions for a ceasefire for the second round of talks. Kyiv presented its terms last week, a roadmap for a long-term peace settlement, outlining an initial 30-day ceasefire as a first step, followed by the mutual return of prisoners and the repatriation of Ukrainian children taken to Russian-controlled territory. Russia said it would present its proposal at the meeting. Neither heads of state are expected to attend the peace talks. Ukrainian Defense Minister Rustem Umerov is expected to lead the Ukrainian representation, while the Russian delegation will be led by Kremlin aide Vladimir Medinsky. Jin, Arirang News.
Over in Gaza, a new aid distribution site became a scene of shocking violence this past Sunday, with dozens killed and many more injured. Our Ising-jae reports.
Dozens of Palestinians were reportedly killed and over 100 others injured on Sunday, with the Palestinian Civil Defense saying Israeli soldiers at a relief distribution center run by the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation fired at people seeking food and aid. The AFP says 31 people were killed and over 176 injured in Rafah at a relief distribution site run by the United States and Israel. According to the spokesperson for the Civil Defense, Mahmoud Basal, Israel targeted thousands of civilians. Hamas also released a statement saying that Israel committed a terrible massacre targeting thousands of civilians heading to a distribution center. The Associated Press, citing a witness, said that at around 3 a.m., Israeli soldiers ordered the crowd to disperse and come back later. When a crowd began forming about 1 kilometer from the distribution site, they opened fire. Another witness said that at around 5 a.m., drones and tanks suddenly attacked the relief center, killing several people. However, the Israeli military dismissed the reports in a statement, saying that false reports have been circulating that raise serious suspicions that Israeli soldiers have fired on civilians near a humanitarian aid distribution site, calling it false. The Israeli military explained that no civilians were fired at inside or around the distribution center. The Gaza Humanitarian Foundation also issued a press release saying that relief supplies were distributed safely and that Hamas is actively spreading rumors about casualties, which they call untrue and fabricated. The GHF announced that it distributed more than 15,000 boxes of relief supplies on Sunday and that more than 67,000 boxes have been distributed since the site opened last week. Ising-jae, Arirang News.
In other news, designated airports here in South Korea and in neighboring Japan have opened priority lanes for passport holders from the two countries to facilitate entry procedures. Our Park Hyo-bin has more.
To mark the 60th anniversary of the normalization of diplomatic relations, South Korea and Japan have launched special fast-track immigration lanes at select airports for travelers between the two countries. On Sunday, June 1st, Japan opened dedicated lanes for Korean nationals at Haneda and Fukuoka airports, while South Korea has been offering similar lanes for Japanese travelers at Gimpo and Gimhae airports. Thanks to the new lanes, what used to take up to an hour can now be completed in just a few minutes.
It used to take more than an hour, so getting to where I'm staying took a long time. But today I passed through immigration quickly. It's so much more convenient.
I'm thinking about working in Japan, so I'll probably be visiting more often. Being able to go through a Korean-only lane really helped save time.
These exclusive lanes are part of a one-month pilot program, which operates daily from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. throughout June. Travelers must have visited the partner country within the past year and completed immigration and customs declarations in advance via mobile. In the case of Gimpo and Haneda airports, the fast-track lanes are limited to passengers flying with Korean Air, Asiana Airlines, Japan Airlines, or All Nippon Airways. Meanwhile, the number of tourists traveling between South Korea and Japan has been steadily rising. Last year, a record of nearly 9 million Koreans visited Japan, while over 3 million Japanese nationals traveled to South Korea. Park Hyo-bin, Arirang News.
This is The World Now, bringing you the latest stories from around the globe. In Russia, 2 bridges and regions bordering Ukraine collapsed over the weekend, killing at least 7 people and injuring dozens. Russian state media reported that the incidents are being investigated as potential acts of terrorism. On Saturday night, a bridge in Russia's Bryansk region collapsed onto a moving passenger train carrying over 300 people. 7 people were killed and more than 70 others were injured in the disaster. Hours later, early on Sunday, a second bridge collapsed in the neighboring Kursk region, derailing a cargo train and injuring the driver. Both the Bryansk and Kursk regions border Ukraine and have seen a surge in attacks on infrastructure since Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Moscow's investigative committee has classified the collapses as terrorist acts. And the state-run Moscow Railways reported that the Bryansk bridge had been blown up in an illegal interference. However, Ukrainian officials have denied the involvement, accusing Russians of staging a false flag operation to manipulate international opinion ahead of the Istanbul negotiations. In Nigeria's Niger State, rescue operations continued over the weekend after at least 200 people died in flooding caused by torrential rain which hit on Thursday. Emergency services said 500 people were still missing and 3,000 residents were displaced in the market town of Mokwa in what is being described as the worst disaster in the area in 6 decades. The National Emergency Management Agency announced on Sunday that it had begun providing relief packages to people affected, and authorities will focus on recovering bodies to prevent potential outbreaks of disease. In the United States, a 16-year-old transgender athlete has secured 2 golds and 1 silver medal at the California Interscholastic Federation State Track and Field Championships, stirring up a controversy over the participation of transgender athletes in a girls' competition. The championships that involved A.B. Hernandez saw protests, with demonstrators displaying signs opposing transgender inclusion in girls' sports. President Donald Trump criticized California's decision to permit Hernandez's participation, threatening to withdraw federal funding from the state. Choi Ji-hee, Arirang News.
It rained everywhere on the first Monday of June. About 5 millimeters of rain is expected in the Seoul metropolitan area, 5 to 10 millimeters in Gangwon-do province, the Chungcheong-do provinces, and Jeollabuk-do province, 5 to 20 millimeters in Jeollanam-do province and the Gyeongsang-do provinces, and 10 to 60 millimeters on Jeju Island until tomorrow morning. The rain is cooling things up a bit. The daytime temperature in Seoul rose up to 23 degrees Celsius, about 6 degrees lower than at the same time yesterday. Seoul will see highs of 25 degrees tomorrow with clear skies. Tomorrow morning, most areas will start off at around 50 to 17 degrees. Daily highs will move up to 26 degrees in Daejeon and Gyeongju, 27 degrees in Daegu. The temperatures will not reach normal levels in the first half of this week. That's all for Korea. Here are the weather conditions around the world.
Those are the headlines at this hour here in South Korea. As always, thank you for watching.